know that we're going to be calling some witnesses out of order this morning just to accommodate schedules. So the defense has not rested. They still have an additional witness or witnesses. The prosecution has 2 witnesses that they are going to call this morning, and then we'll go back to the defense. You will also recall that Mr. Sean Martin is still subject to cross-examination for the prosecution. He will be called at some point either later this morning or perhaps early this afternoon, depending how the testimony goes. Now, also to give you an update with respect to our schedule, we're hopeful that if we can get done early enough this afternoon, that I will be pre-instructing you, and then the lawyers will be arguing the case to you this afternoon. We will see how things go depending on how the evidence plays out and how long witnesses take when they testify. So at the very best case scenario, the case will be in your hands late this afternoon. Worst case scenario is that it may be tomorrow morning, depending on how late the witness's evidence is. I do not want to break up the arguments, so you'll hear the arguments all at once. So if we don't have time this afternoon to get both arguments completed, then we will do them tomorrow. But in any event, the case will be in your hands early tomorrow morning. We'll probably start a little bit early if we need to in order to get those arguments done. So that's where we're at as far as scheduling. We're right on schedule from where we had thought we would be. All right, so with that said, we'll turn to the people, and if you'd like to call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. People call Dr. Solomon. If I may, I'll step out.
All right. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you're taking notes, you may want to draw a line indicating this is a people's witness, not a defense witness. The next 2 witnesses will be prosecution witnesses.
Follow the directions of the deputy.
You do solemnly state that the evidence you shall give in the matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please be seated.
Remove your mask, adjust the microphone so it's right front of you so you can hear.
Okay.
Please state and spell your first and your last name for the record.
So, Robert, R-O-B-E-R-T, Solomon, S-O-L-O-M-O-N.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Solomon.
Morning.
What's your occupation?
I'm a licensed clinical psychologist.
And how long have you been a licensed clinical psychologist?
Since 1984.
And has that been in the state of California?
Yes, the entire time.
In that entire time, have you been in private practice?
Yes, for that entire time.
Okay. And in terms of your qualifications for holding that licensed position, can you just give us a brief background?
I have a bachelor's degree in psychology from Wayne State University in 1970. Wayne, W-A-Y-N-E. Wayne State University in Detroit, 1975. A master's degree in psychology from Pepperdine University, 1977. And a PhD in psychology from the California Graduate Institute in Los Angeles. Since then, they've changed their name to the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. And and in order to become a licensed psychologist, in addition to having a doctoral degree, one is required to complete a written and oral examination and complete 3,000 hours of supervision.
Okay. And so from 1984, then you've been a licensed psychologist that whole time?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of your practice, can you tell us the nature of your practice?
I've been in full-time private practice since 1982 in Corona. Prior to 1984, I was practicing as a licensed marriage, family, and child therapist. I've been a marriage, family, and child therapist since 1978. Currently, it's a fairly general practice. I work about 95% of the time I work with adults.
Okay. And so you're a treating psychologist, so people will schedule appointments to see you. They will come into your office, and you will evaluate them, take their personal history, and maybe talk to family members?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And in that process, that's your practice. You don't, for instance, testify in court?
No, in fact, I've never testified in court before.
Okay. So you're not one of those psychologists who will get $500 and come into court and testify in a capital case?
That's correct.
Okay. Never testified before?
Correct.
Okay. And in terms of being here today, you were scheduled to come in yesterday, is that correct?
Yes.
But because of scheduling, we had to rearrange things and you had to cancel some appointments.
Yes, I had to cancel all my appointments yesterday.
And in terms of that, the people have agreed to compensate you for any loss of appointment payments for today?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in terms of you're treating somebody as a psychologist, just briefly explain to us that when somebody comes in to your office, that the process you would go through in order to begin any treatment program with them.
Well, I would initially ask them what brings them into the office, what they would like to gain from coming to our appointments, what their essentially what the presenting problem is, what their goals are.
And in doing that,
Pardon me.
Would you be making observations of the person who you're talking to who's giving you this information?
Yes.
Okay. Would that be important to you in terms of any diagnosis that you would actually see the person that you were treating in person in your office?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in terms of Brandon Martin, did you see a person by the name of Brandon Martin back in July and August of 2015?
Yes.
That person, Brandon Martin, that you saw, how was it that consultation or that treatment program began?
I don't recall exactly how he was referred to me. I could give you a best guess, but I don't really know.
Okay. So at some point, a referral was made and an appointment was set up to see somebody by the name of Brandon Martin?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember when that first appointment was?
Yes, it was for July 16, 2015.
And on that day, did Brandon Martin actually come to the office?
No, he did not.
Did anybody from the Martin family come to the office?
Yes, his mother came.
Okay. And when his mother came, did she explain to you that Brandon Martin did not want to come to the appointment?
Yes.
Now, at that time, did you spend an hour with her going over Brandon Martin's history?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And that was allowing you to get background and some from the family members, correct?
Yes.
Important to you at that time to get some feedback from the family members during that time?
Yes.
Okay. Did you meet with Melody Martin more than once alone to discuss Brandon Martin?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Was that other time on July the 30th?
Yes, that's correct.
And then, separate from Melody Martin, did you in fact at some point meet with Brandon Martin for a psychological evaluation?
Yes, I saw Brandon Martin for a total of 3 times.
And those 3 times you saw him pretty much between the periods of late July and August of 2015?
That's correct.
Okay. And a couple of times, would Melody Martin sit in towards the end of the consultation?
Yes, July 22, 2015, I met with Brandon alone the entire session. On August 12, 2015, I met with Brandon alone for most of the session, and his mother joined us during the last 15 minutes of that visit. And the last time that I met with either of them, I met with the two of them together for the entire hour on August 26, 2015.
Okay. That initial meeting with Melody Martin, did she give you some background as to what Brandon Martin was doing at the time?
Yes.
What was that?
He was living at home and having a difficult time getting along with his parents. He was not enrolled in school, was not employed. There were a number of verbal and physical altercations between he and his parents, and eventually there was a contract, I believe, I don't know if it was a written or unwritten contract between Brandon and his mother or both parents, stating that he had to meet 5 requirements in order to continue to live in their home. Okay.
Basically the rules of the house?
Yes, yeah.
And did Melody Martin tell you that she in fact had kicked Brandon out of the house in around September 2014?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And in terms of when you met with Brandon Martin, what were your observations of him when you saw him on 7/22/2015?
I'm going pretty much verbatim by my notes here, if that's okay.
Well, to the extent you can recall, you can let us know. If you can't, just let us know and you can refresh your recollection.
Okay. Yeah, he appeared passively cooperative at best, I would say. Essentially, he was very resistant, very reluctant to be in my office. He essentially said he didn't want to be here in the office. He was just there because his mother was requiring him to be to see me in return for being allowed to continue to live in their home.
Did he present with anger issues towards? Did he present with anger issues?
Yes.
And could you see where that anger was targeted?
Yes, primarily at both parents.
And in terms of his father, did he give you any particular details as to why he was angry at his father?
Yes, although it was not very coherent, or it didn't. But for example, I made a statement to the effect that it sounds like you're not very happy at home, and his response was, quote, "My dad started the whole thing." Quote, "I got into a fight with my dad over my girlfriend." Quote, "I socked him in his face and he kicked me out for 1 week." He said that he doesn't like his father, that his father, quote, "is pretty quiet, and that's annoying to me." And after he moved back home, he said that he hadn't spoken with his father for 5 or 6 months.
Okay. And did you get some information from Melody Martin at the time that Mr. Michael Martin was in very poor health?
Yes.
And did Brandon make any references to his dad's poor health?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
He said that his father has diabetes, He goes to the hospital all the time. That his, so I'm not sure if, let's see. That his father, he may not have used these exact words, but essentially his father was confined to a wheelchair, and Brandon says something to the effect that if I were him, I would rather be dead.
Okay. Now, in terms of his mood, you saw him again on, I believe it was 8/26 of 2015 as well.
Yes, 8/26/15. That was the last time I saw him.
Okay, and how did he appear to you then?
That was frankly the least productive of any of our visits together. He was much more uncooperative, resistant, angry than the previous visits. I met with, I think as I said, I met with Brandon and his mother the entire hour. Brandon was very angry and hostile. He stated that he didn't feel that he needed medication or counseling. He said that both medication and or counseling are, quote, a waste of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
And that his mother is, making him do it.
Had you received information earlier from Melody Martin that, in fact, when you saw him before, that Brandon was changed and was behaving himself at home?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
When you saw Melody Martin on July the 30th, did you get a report that Brandon was following the rules and being cooperative at home?
Yes, on July 30th, Melody Martin reported that Brandon had been doing a lot better since our session. She stated, quote, "It almost seemed like a light bulb came from it," unquote. Quote, "Brandon acted as if he unloaded or unburdened himself, which is and it's surprising that he did that." And she was very optimistic.
And during this time of your observations of Brandon Martin and the reports from the family, did you get any information regarding drug use?
Yes.
And what was that information?
His mother was fairly certain that he had been using marijuana, and I believe that that was not at all a secret, because that his marijuana use was a large part of the reason why he got in trouble with Major League Baseball, and played an important role as to why he was eventually terminated from the Major League. And then Brandon admitted that he used marijuana, and I asked him, how often, once a week, once a month, and he said about 50% of the time. And as I recall, my understanding was that he was saying about 50% of the days, more on average every other day.
He's using marijuana.
Using marijuana, yes.
And in terms of your review of him and your observations, did you receive any information from him or from his mother that he was having hallucinations?
No.
Any delusions?
No.
Any homicidal ideations?
No.
any suicidal ideations?
No.
Again, you had spent time with Melody Martin on her own and with Brandon Martin?
Yes.
And you had seen Brandon Martin on his own and with his mother?
Yes.
If you had seen any of those things, you would have made a note of that?
Yes.
That would have been important to you in terms of your evaluation?
Yes.
Did you make a diagnosis of Brandon Martin from the several times that you saw him?
Yes.
And what was that diagnosis?
So, kind of a dual diagnosis. One was of marijuana dependence, and the second one was adjustment disorder with mixed disturbance of emotion and conduct.
Okay. Let's take the first part of that, marijuana dependence. What does that mean in terms of a psychological diagnosis?
The primary impression I was struck with was that his use of marijuana was appeared to be the leading cause of his not functioning at his true capacity or his true potential.
Okay. And that not functioning, you'd received information from him that he had no job?
Yes, from both his mother and himself.
He had no money. He had spent all his $860,000 contract money?
Yes, from both his mother and himself, yes.
No social life?
Correct.
Okay. No friends?
Correct.
In looking at the drug use there, the marijuana, did you also consider any other substance abuse together with that?
Yes, and so I put in my notes after marijuana dependence, I wrote down rule out polysubstance abuse, but I really wasn't sure what specific other drugs he may be using. Okay.
But you had a suspicion that there may be other drugs involved?
Yes, and as I recall, I believe that his mother made mention of the fact that one of the main ways that he squandered a large amount of his money was by having parties that involved renting out expensive homes for the party, as well as having various drugs and alcohol.
Okay. Now, you said the second part of your diagnosis was adjustment disorder?
Yes.
Can you explain what you meant by that?
An adjustment disorder is an adjustment disorder is kind of a conservative diagnosis that is used when someone is going through a life transition, so that the person might be depressed or anxious or having behavioral difficulties due to, for example, graduating high school or starting a new job or losing a job or breaking up with a significant other, relocating one's residence. Any of those things are likely to be stressful events for, quote, normal people, and sometimes it can lead to adjustment difficulties, such as depression, anxiety, etc. Okay.
And then couple that with the dependency on the marijuana, that is a psychological problem.
Yes.
Okay. Now, earlier, I asked you, when you saw him these number of times in July and August 2015, were you going to meet him in September of 2015?
Yes. I had an appointment to see him on September 9th. I don't recall if it was him alone or him with his mother, but Yes, I have it down that we had an appointment for September 9th at 4:30 p.m. and they no-showed.
Now, I mean, during the time that you were treating him, Dr. Solomon, did you ever see any indications of any psychosis?
No.
And psychosis can be a broad subject matter, correct?
Yes.
And within psychosis, we have something called paranoid schizophrenia.
Yes.
Okay. You saw no evidence of that in Brandon Martin.
That's correct.
And if you had, you obviously would have made that part of your diagnosis.
Yes.
Now, in terms of paranoid schizophrenia, can you explain to us what that is in terms of a psychological diagnosis?
Yes. Schizophrenia is a severe psychiatric disorder, a severe form of mental illness, and it's primarily characterized by 5 symptoms, 2 in particular. One doesn't have to have all 5 of the following symptoms in order to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, but you have to have at least 2 out of the 5 in order to meet the criteria for schizophrenia. And by far the most common and important symptom is hallucinations. And the hallucinations an hallucination essentially is a false perception of external reality. And any sensory perception can be involved, but in schizophrenia, it is by far most common for the hallucination to be an auditory hallucination.
As opposed to a visual one.
Right, as opposed to a visual one or olfactory or tactile hallucinations.
And this would be somebody who would be hearing voices in their heads?
Yes, but for a schizophrenic, usually when they hear voices, most of the time the voices are heard from outside of their head, just like you're hearing my voice right now. When you saw Brandon Martin, did you ever see anything in him in terms of that external stimuli? No, that he was. I never saw him appearing to respond. If I understand your question,
yeah. No,
I never saw him appearing to respond inappropriately to external stimuli.
Okay. And in terms of paranoid schizophrenia, anyway, I mean, is there a kind of a myth about what paranoid schizophrenia is in the lay community? Yeah,
I think yes. I think that the lay community, I think, has a impression that paranoid schizophrenics are dangerous or prone to violence, and that is not true, or at best it's controversial, but it's generally regarded by mental health professionals as being untrue. That generally people who are mentally ill are no more likely to be violent than the general population.
Okay. And in terms of you making a diagnosis, it's important to you that you actually see the person you're treating?
Yes.
Would you make a diagnosis if you had not actually seen the person and interviewed him and spoke to him?
No, I would not.
Would that be proper?
No, it would be a violation of the Code of Ethics of the American Psychological Association.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
Yeah. Ross?
Sir, I'm looking at your letterhead, and it says clinical psychology marriage and family counseling. Is that correct?
Yes.
What's the difference between clinical psychology and marriage and family counseling?
Well, I have both licenses. excuse me, the difference, in short, the difference is that to become a marriage and family therapist, one has to have a master's degree in psychology or a related field. To be a licensed psychologist, one has to have a doctoral degree in psychology or a related field. And there are specific oral and written exams for each license.
So why do you differentiate that on your letterhead?
Why do I differentiate that on my letterhead?
Yes. Are they separate tasks?
No, no, they're not necessarily separate tasks. They're, I have both on my letterhead because I have both licenses.
Okay.
And but in practice, I'd say for the most part, one might say that a marriage and family therapist can, at least on the surface, do the same thing that a licensed psychologist does.
Okay.
They both provide individual or family counseling.
So when I think of a marriage and family counselor, I think of someone who, if I have problems with my wife, we're thinking of maybe separating or divorcing, we come speak with you either individually or as a pair, and you try to get us to work through our problems. Is that some of the things you do?
Yes.
About what percentage of your practice is that?
Currently, I'd say at the present time, maybe 5 or 10%.
Okay.
It used to be a much larger part of my practice.
When did it used to be a much larger part of your practice?
Well, certainly including at the time that I saw Brandon and Melody Martin, it was a larger part of my practice. And preceding that, I guess one might say it has gradually diminished over the decades.
Okay. So do you have an estimate in 2015? What percentage of your practice was marriage counseling?
20%.
Okay. And then when I think of family counseling, I think of an issue where either one or two parents has an issue with their child. The child is acting out, or the child has drug or alcohol or school issues or something, and you meet with the family to try to work through their issues. Is that an apt description?
Yes.
Okay. And again, back in 2015, what was the percentage of your practice where you did that?
About 20%.
Okay. Now, when you first met with Melody Martin, she detailed issues that they were having with Brandon at home, correct?
Yes.
And so, are you looking at it in your mind like this is a marriage and family counseling issue where we need to get a treatment plan, we need to talk to these folks and figure out how we're going to resolve these issues?
No.
Okay. What is in your mind, when you meet with Melody Martin and she tells you about these problems at home, what is your mindset? What's your plan?
My initial expectation and my initial plan was to provide individual psychotherapy to Brandon.
Okay.
And when Brandon did not show up for the first appointment and his mother did instead, I saw her and got history of Brandon from his mother's point of view.
Okay. And during that history, did she mention to you that Brandon had been treated and been seen by a psychiatrist?
No, she had not.
Okay. Specifically the name Dr. Valque. Do you recall that name?
No, she had not mentioned that.
Did she tell you that he had been prescribed and at one point taken Abilify?
No.
And you're obviously aware, you know what Abilify is?
Yes.
Okay. We've had people talk about that. So your initial consult with Brandon Martin. Let me show you a form, and I'm just showing you this form to see if you're familiar with the form. I don't need you to see what's written on the form. I just want you to know if you're familiar with it. I can't approach, so I'm going to put it on this here.
Oh, okay.
Does this form, you did not use this form. This is not you.
Correct.
Does this form look familiar to you?
No.
I don't know if this is a standard form in the industry.
It has standard information on it, so
Language like this, have you ever seen a form like this?
Sure, yes.
Okay, all right. What is it, basically? What have you seen that looks like this?
It's a checklist of basic symptoms, and I think the first page you showed me, I just got a glance of it.
Oh,
but,
sure, I mean...
But it looked like, the person's name, age, gender, marital status.
show you the...
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I mean, we're treating this like an exhibit right now.
Okay, well, I can enter it as an exhibit.
All right, why don't we have it marked
That's
anyways?
fine.
Let's do that. So it'd be defense next in order, which would be F, triple F.
Thank you.
Then I would object as to relevance and hearsay.
Well, at this point, go ahead and ask the next question.
Thank you. This is page 2 of the form. Does this type of form look familiar to you?
Yes.
Page 3 of the form. Does this look familiar to you?
Yes, I haven't seen this particular form before, but generally the content is very familiar.
Okay. Did you use any type of form like this when you interviewed Brandon Martin back in July of 2015?
No, I did not.
How come?
Those forms are generally used in clinic settings. If a person is being seen at a county facility or in a hospital or a clinic setting, or perhaps part of a group private practice, I think if one sees a psychotherapist individually, it's pretty much up to the individual psychotherapist's discretion whether or not to use a form like that or other forms, but it's not necessary. I can essentially through the process of my interview, collect the same information without using a written form like that.
Okay. We've talked about in an interview that Brandon Martin had with Dr. Valque that she gave him some tests regarding proverbs. Are you familiar with those tests?
Yes, I am.
Counting backwards from 100 by sevens. You familiar with that?
Yes.
The 3 objects, you come back after 5 minutes to see if you can recall those 3 objects. Are you familiar with that test?
Yes.
Did you perform any of those tests of Brandon Martin?
No, I did not do any psychological testing with him. I did not do a formal mental status exam with him. And again, perhaps if I worked for a clinic or a hospital or a government agency, that would be a standard procedure. But in private practice, that is done very infrequently unless there's a specific reason to do that.
Okay.
I saw the 2 of them. I saw Brandon a total of 3 times. It didn't seem, and my objective was not to determine whether or not he suffered a neurological impairment, for example, when counting backwards from 100 by sevens is kind of a standard mental status procedure for helping rule out neurological damage, and I can give other examples as well.
But do you feel that in order to effectively treat Brandon Martin back in 2015, you might want to look to see if there's any neurological damage?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
Certainly. You told us that you weren't looking for any neurological damage, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you think that maybe you would have been more effective treating him if you had looked for such things?
No. No. Again, when would I do that? He did not appear for his first appointment. When I saw him the second time, he was extremely resistant and cooperative. Doing a standard mental status exam would strike me as being inappropriate, and I'm 95% certain that he would not cooperate with it had I attempted to do a mental status exam with him.
You told us that when you asked Brandon if he'd had any problems at home, he said, my dad started it, basically, something like that. Correct?
Yes.
And you told us that in your mind, that was not very coherent. Remember saying that, correct?
Yes, his answer was not very coherent.
Did that raise a red flag? That, hey, maybe there's something going on up there that they're not telling me about?
It raised a red flag in the sense that he was being guarded and evasive. He was being uncooperative, and he, by his own admission, he didn't want to be there.
Okay. And is that uncommon for people suffering from mental illness to be guarded, evasive, uncooperative, and just don't want to be there?
Yes.
That's uncommon?
It's not uncommon.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Mainly the part that when you asked, and does not want to be there. Yeah.
You were only as good as the information you were given, correct?
Yes.
You could only work with the information you were given, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Have you run into instances where people are either poor historians, they have bad memories, or they don't tell you the truth of what's going on?
Absolutely.
I'm guessing you are on guard for that, correct?
Yes.
Were you on guard for that here?
Yes.
What steps did you take to determine whether these people, either mom or son, are telling you the truth or there's something more there?
It was clear that there was that Brandon was not being very open and candid throughout the time that I saw him. He did not want to be there. He did not want to cooperate. He stated it was a waste of time, and that his family was making him be there. And I believe at either the last time or the second to last time that I saw him, he pretty much walked out of the session shortly before the session was going to end.
Your initial meeting with Brandon back on July 22nd, 2015, he complained to you that he was suffering headaches 4 to 5 times a month.
Yes.
Sharp, poking pain. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, as a clinician, does that raise a red flag to you?
I guess you would have to define red flag. But I guess if I had to give an answer, I'd say no. Okay. A red flag for what?
Well, I'm asking you. You're the professional here. You're trying to figure out are you trying to figure out what's going on in somebody's mind while you're talking to them?
Well, just as on that form that you showed me, there are questions about, like the person's date of birth, place of birth, where did they grow up, who do they live with, what's their address, their social history, their educational history, their employment history, their medical history. I was asking questions. I didn't have a form for it, but I asked questions regarding his medical history. Okay. So specifically, and it's in my notes, specifically I asked him, have you ever been hospitalized overnight for anything? Have you ever had any surgery? Have you ever had any major illnesses besides, a cold or a flu? Do you have any allergies? Are you currently taking any medicine? And of that, he mentioned to me that he has headaches and that he broke 1 or possibly 2 of his fingers and had surgery for 1 of those fingers.
You spoke to mom the week before. She told you that there's issues at home. He's violent with his father. He's not doing what he's told. He has no friends. He just stays up in his room all the time, correct?
Yes.
Then you meet with Brandon. He is uncooperative. He is guarded. He does not want to be there. I'm guessing he's surly. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, are you thinking there might be some neurological issues, especially when he then tells you, I'm suffering sharp, severe headaches 4 to 5 times a month? Does that not raise a red flag that there might be something going on organically?
He did not say sharp or severe headaches.
How did he describe them?
He said headaches. According to my notes, he said headaches.
And then what else did it say after that? Sharp, poking pain, correct?
No, and says sometimes couldn't go to school.
Okay, maybe I'm not reading your handwriting.
I see what you. I beg your pardon. Above that, it says that he has headaches 4 or 5 times. This is in response to my questions.
Right.
4 or 5 times a month or more. And I asked him, where does he feel them? Usually the right side of his head, sometimes the front. Could he describe the pain? He said sharp poking pain. He's had it all of his life. Okay. I asked him what he takes for it, prescribed he takes Exclusion, and usually the headaches go away.
As a clinician, does that not raise a red flag that maybe there's something organic going on up here that you need to refer him to somebody? No. That's fine.
It does not. The headaches go away with Exclusion, and he had an appointment with a psychiatrist I believe it was scheduled for August. Headaches are a very, very common physical complaint. Less than 1% of headaches have an organic cause to them. At least 99% of headaches are attention headaches, migraine headaches, or cluster headaches, or caused by pollutants. It's relatively rare for a headache to be due to a brain tumor or something similar.
And just so we are clear, sir, you have a PhD in psychology, correct?
That's correct.
You did not attend medical school, correct?
Correct.
You do not have a residency in psychiatry, correct?
Correct.
You cannot prescribe drugs, correct?
Correct.
In August 12th, you make a note that Brandon told you he's only here because his mom wants him here, and he would not give you authorization to see or to discuss the case with the previous counselor.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Excuse me. And again, this is something that is included on the standard form that you showed me, obtaining the person's past history of psychological or psychiatric treatment. The only history that was disclosed to me was that he had 4 previous visits, primarily for marijuana use, and that the 4 visits were required as part of, in his words, a 30-day process while he was employed by the Major League.
And you're sure this was in regard to counseling for the marijuana use? You have a recollection of that?
That's what he told me. Yes, I do have a recollection of that.
Okay.
And so I asked him for authorization to contact his previous psychological counselor, and which I'm not sure, but I think it might be an employee assistance program through the baseball league. But at any rate, I asked him for authorization to contact his previous counselor, and he said that he could not give me that authorization because he no longer had the person's name or phone number.
In fact, he called her. He said, I no longer have her name or phone number, correct? That's in your notes?
I don't... Where do you see that? I'm sorry. He said he could not because he no longer had their name or phone number.
I'm reading this as no longer her name or phone number. Is that correct?
He said he could not because there, He said he could not because he no longer had their name or phone number.
My apologies. You received a phone call from Melanie Martin on August 17th, correct?
Yes, that must be my, let's see. On August 17th, I don't see that. August 17th. Bear with me 1 minute, please. I don't have that in front of me.
All right. Here, let me show you where I'm showing it on my copy. See at the top it's 812 and then the bottom 817.
Oh, okay. Okay, yes, all right. August 17th, at 6:45 p.m., I returned a telephone call from her.
Do you recall why she called you?
Oh, my prior visit was the one time that was the first time that I had seen Brandon alone, I believe. And so then she called me a few days later and was asking me for information about that session. And I explained that I could not disclose information to her for ethical and legal reasons. I invited her to accompany Brandon to part or all of our next session.
Okay. So, in other words, she's calling you to say, hey, how did things go last week? You say, I really can't tell you because of privacy concerns,
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have your notes from your August 12th meeting with this meeting we were talking about, this meeting with Brandon?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, there it says that the patient declined medical evaluation. Do you see that? I think it's at the very end of the notes.
It's not on my summary here, but I
can show you what I'm looking at.
Okay, that would be great. Okay. August 12th, met with patient and mother together for 15 minutes at end. Patient declined psychiatric medical evaluation.
Okay. What does that mean?
I suggested that he be evaluated by a psychiatrist for possible psychiatric medication.
Why?
He was essentially, there had been a total breakdown in his ability to function, apparently for psychiatric reasons, and it seemed as if he needed more than what I had to offer him.
Okay, so your initial diagnosis was marijuana dependence, correct?
Yeah, yes.
And are you trying to say that after meeting with him some time, you realized that there might be more to his problems than marijuana dependence?
To answer your last question first, yes, there might be more to his problems than marijuana dependence, and there are also medications that help a person discontinue marijuana dependence.
Okay, but it was your professional opinion that he see a psychiatrist to see what else is going on up there.
Yes, especially since he was being so uncooperative with me. Yes.
your next sentence, can you read, I think it says, out of what?
Oh, yeah.
Reality? What does that say?
It says out of sync with reality, question mark.
What does that mean?
Because of his use of marijuana, and because I was under the impression that he may very well have been high on marijuana or something at the time, it was difficult for me to make an accurate diagnosis, and I thought it would be a good idea for him to be seen by a psychiatrist to get another opinion.
So and you put a question mark, basically you're saying to yourself, is he out of sync with reality? Is that correct?
Yes, and that may or may not be due to drugs.
And that's going to be my next question. You're saying it could be due to the marijuana or other drugs, or there could be mental health issues impairing his abilities. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's why you wanted him to go see a psychiatrist, correct?
Yes. Being out of sync with reality, it could be due to a substance. It could be due to an underlying mental illness. It could be a combination of the two.
Did you eventually learn around September 17, 18, 19, 20, that Mr. Martin had been accused of murdering his uncle, his father, and a repairman or an alarm installer who was at the house?
Yes.
Because you make a note in September 25 that you consulted with Dr. Sporty, correct? If you wish, I can show that to you.
Yes, please.
Have that. Thank you.
Objection, relevance.
I don't know what the relevance is at this point, so I'll give you some leeway.
Thank you. Do you see your 925 note?
Yes. I consulted with Dr. L. Sporty, reviewing case history, course of treatment, my own feelings about the September 18 triple homicide, etc.
Who is Dr. Sporty?
Dr. Sporty is a psychiatrist in private practice in Orange County.
Why did you consult with, is it a him or a her?
Him.
Why did you consult with him?
I was stunned. Only a few weeks earlier, I had seen Brandon, and I came home one day. I believe it was a Friday. I had just gone grocery shopping. I had while I was putting the groceries away, I turned on the TV. I believe it was the 4 o'clock news was just coming on ABC, and the very first thing that was broadcast was Brandon Martin's face. And I was shocked. And, the first thing that came, just for a second, the first thing that flashed through my mind was, oh my God, he's committed suicide. And then the story unfolded that he had killed 2 people and a third person was in a coma. And I was shocked, and I wanted essentially an emotional debriefing. And
were you worried that you might have missed something?
Yes, I was primarily wanting an emotional debriefing, but including or as well as I wanted an opinion as far as whether or not I had done something wrong. Yeah, whether I had missed something.
Great. Thank you, sir. That's all.
Redirect.
Yes, just briefly, Your Honor. You said also, in terms of the marijuana dependency, there was also the adjustment disorder, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And those symptoms, again, that you noticed in terms of the adjustment disorder?
Yes.
Well, what were they?
Depression and anxiety. Depression as manifested by the fact that he was having difficulty concentrating. He was very low on energy. He lacked motivation, lacked initiative. Overtly, his mood appeared to be depressed. He was very socially withdrawn, and his guardedness may very well have been due to anxiety.
And at that time, you saw no evidence of psychosis?
Correct.
No hallucinations?
That's right.
No delusions?
That's right.
And in terms of, you wanted him to see a psychiatrist because a psychiatrist can prescribe medications, correct?
Yes.
A psychologist, as yourself, is not licensed to prescribe medications.
Yes.
So often in your practice, when you're working as a psychologist and you believe that the next step would be a psychiatrist to look at prescribing medications, say for depression.
Yes.
Okay. For some of the symptoms that we're talking about with the adjustment disorder.
Yes.
And prescriptions that would allow somebody to not be dependent upon marijuana and suffer withdrawals from marijuana dependency.
Yes, that's correct.
And in fact, a psychiatrist was scheduled to see Brandon Martin, correct?
Yes, Dr. Kodamari in Riverside.
And that was for him to look at prescribing medications, and that would further your treatment of Brandon Martin as a licensed psychologist.
That's right. And I stated it was for a psychiatric medication evaluation, which includes an antidepressant, anti-anxiety, et cetera.
And from what you saw in your treatment, there was nothing to indicate that this person, Brandon Martin, was going to go out and commit a triple murder.
Definitely not.
As a psychologist, is there any way really to tell whether somebody's going to walk out your door and commit 3 murders?
Unfortunately, the research has shown that no, psychologists or psychiatrists there is no scientific way of predicting that someone is going to become violent.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Mr. Jensen?
Nothing, thank you.
All right, is the doctor excused?
Yes.
Doctor, just for the record, the Dr. Sporty that you called, what was the spelling of his name?
Sporty.
And the other doctor that you were referring to as a psychiatrist, the name of the spelling of that?
Kotomori, I think.
All right. All right, thank you. You're excused, doctor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next witness.
Thank you, Craig Andersen.
I need a third hand there.
Oh, did it break or? Okay.
I'm ready. Thank you.
Solemnly state that the evidence is the truth and
I do.
Okay, thank you.
state and spell your first and your last name for the record.
Craig Andersen, CraigAndersen.
Mr. Anderson, just a couple of rules about your testimony. Please use that microphone. You can adjust it if you like. The base moves, as does the top. You can adjust your chair however is comfortable. Secondly, when the lawyers ask questions, we need a verbal or audible answer. So if you just nod your head up and down or shake your head side to side, we'll need to get clarification. And then lastly, please wait until the lawyer is done asking their question before you respond. In other words, don't talk at the same time.
Yes, sir.
Okay? All right. Mr. Beecham.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Anderson, are you related to Rick Andersen?
Yes.
How so?
Brother.
I understand that he has a lot of siblings, or had a lot of siblings.
Correct. 16 total.
And where are you with regard to all the siblings?
Number 15.
Number 15, so not quite last.
No.
First off, I want to ask you about September 15th, 2015.
Correct.
Were you given a call by somebody to go to the Winthrop address in Corona?
Yes.
And who did you receive a call from, if you recall?
I remember Michael calling me. Other people may have, but I just remember Michael.
Okay. Michael, your brother?
Michael, my nephew, Rick's son.
Okay. So Michael Andersen.
Michael Andersen.
Got it. The other people may have called you, but you don't recall.
Correct.
Are you close to the Martin family?
Yes.
And how close are you?
Close, very close.
How often would you have contact with either Melody or Michael Martin?
In the past, a couple of years before he passed, every week, every 2 weeks.
Okay. We'll come back to that. And so you were called to go to the Winthrop address, is that right?
Correct.
And what was the nature of the call?
Nature of the relevant for these purposes?
Overall, may I answer?
The nature of the call was to go there and basically intervene with Brandon and whatever needed to be done to be done.
Okay. Including beating him up?
Correct.
And was that your understanding, is really to go there to kind of knock some sense into him?
Yeah, sit him down, figure it out, and if he tried to leave the room or tried to do anything, we were just going to keep him in there and do what we needed to do.
And if it resulted to, or resorted to physical restraints, if you will, or it would come to that?
Correct.
All right. So when you arrived, who did you see when you arrived?
When I arrived, I remember walking up to the house. The police was already there. I remember Michael Andersen, Rick's son, and Melody standing in the driveway with a police officer.
Okay. And so the police were already there by the time you got there?
As far as I remember, yes, they were already there.
Okay. And it wasn't your idea to call the police? You didn't call the police yourself?
No.
So whoever called the police, it was their idea and you didn't know anything about it?
When we were standing there, Michael Andersen, Melody, and I were talking to the police, and they were going over what to do.
Okay. But I'm talking about when the decision was made to call the police, you weren't part of that?
No.
Okay. All right. So with regard to Michael Martin, you said that you knew him quite a bit.
Correct.
Or you saw him quite a bit.
Correct.
And you knew him quite well.
Yes.
Where would you often see him? At their house, your house, both, or?
In the younger years, at their house, sometimes at our house. The later years, last couple years, we would see him and Melody at church.
At church, okay. And how often was that?
Usually, sometimes every weekend, sometimes every other weekend.
And when you saw him at church, I imagine you talked to them?
Oh, absolutely.
And did you get along well with Michael Martin?
Yes.
How well did you get along with him?
Great. He was... He was my brother.
He was among your Even though you had all these other siblings, brothers and sisters, you considered him a brother as well?
Correct.
And you said that you'd primarily see him at church?
Yes, in the last couple of years.
Okay. And now, since his passing, how has it impacted you?
It's been hard because you think of all the good times, the memories. How we always had great conversations, watched sports, went to the beach, barbecued. He was just a good man to converse with.
Was it difficult to go to church knowing that he wasn't there?
Yes.
You said that going to the beach was something that you liked to do with him. Did you feel that emptiness when you'd have family functions and he wasn't there?
Yes.
And Rick was your brother as well?
Correct.
Your biological brother?
Correct.
And where was he in relation to you in order?
I believe he was number 8, 9, 10.
It's hard to keep track, right?
Yes.
And he was, it sounds like from what we know, he was very close to the Martin family as well.
Correct.
And were you close with Rick?
Yes.
Tell us about Rick. What did you like doing with Rick?
Rick was always into the outdoors. When I grew up, he was already pretty much moved out of the house. Him and the older ones, they were more like aunts and uncles. Because we wouldn't see him very often because they already moved on. But when he'd come to visit, he always took care of us.
And the loss of Rick in your life, how has that impacted you?
Sad, because I worked for him for 10 years. Near the end of the working relationship, we had issues, but the issues got taken care of, and we were rebuilding good, and we were just looking forward to doing things together as a family.
Do you feel like you never really closed that door on that issue that you had with your brother? You didn't have time to do that?
No, I did.
You did? Okay, so you're grateful that you had that at least.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you. Nothing further.
Cross, Mr. Jensen.
Your sister's Melody, correct?
Correct.
Brandon's mom, correct?
Correct.
See her here in the courtroom?
Correct.
Prior to September 2015, tell us about your relationship with her.
With Melody?
Yes.
Good. Very good.
When you say we'd see them at church, we're talking about Mike and Melody?
Mike and Mel, I believe, for the last couple of years, maybe 2013 to 15.
Okay. You'd spend time with the family unit, the Martin family unit?
Yes.
Did you watch Sean and Brandon grow up?
Correct.
How would you describe their family unit as the boys went through elementary school, junior high, high school?
Both boys were very good.
How about the family unit as a whole?
Seemed fine.
You enjoyed spending time with them?
Absolutely.
The relationship with your sister, has it changed since September 2015?
Yes, because it's been tough.
Okay. Safe to say you're not as close with her anymore?
I'm still close.
Okay. Do you have as much contact with her now as you did back then, prior to 2015?
I would still see her at church whenever we had church that would go on. She would invite us over for football games. We would invite her over, so we still saw each other.
Okay. Is your relationship the same?
The relationship, I think, is still good. I believe with the murder that happened, it's put a strain on the whole family.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Beecham.
Nothing else. You can be excused.
Excuse,
Okay.
Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
You're excused. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our morning recess at this time. Remind all of you not to discuss facts of this case amongst yourselves or with anyone unrelated to the trial, not form or express any opinion until you've heard all the evidence.